ASU and Utah are hoping to have their rivalry reborn this year. How are they going to stack up with the rest of the Big 12, though?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Podcast Network for a special crossover edition between Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Utes. I'm the Locked On Sun Devils host, Richie Bradshaw, joined by the Locked On Utes host, JT Wistrcill. Today, we're going to be talking ASU, Utah, because I don't know if you know this, they're going to be playing this year. But we also got to take a look at how the rest of the Big 12 stacks up. If not ASU, Utah, who? That's coming up first. Before we take a look at the most difficult games on ASU and Utah's schedule, respectively. And then, of course, how can we not talk about this rivalry reborn? That's coming up towards the end of the show. Before we get started, thanks to each and every single one of the followers and the subscribers for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Utes your first listens of the day and your second listens and your third listens and all that good stuff. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. Look, JT, this is a big season for ASU and Utah. ASU trying to prove they can run it back. Utah is got a little bit of revenge on their mind, I imagine, with the way that last season just did not go your way. I mean, what's kind of going on in Salt Lake right now?
Well, I'll talk about what's going on in Utah in a second, but I will just say this really quickly about ASU because you guys are trying to do something that Utah did a few years ago, go back to back. And it does make a major difference when you can follow one title up with another, the national level of respect and all those things that you garner. It really did put Utah on another level right after they won 2 back-to-back Pac-12 titles. They had their best recruiting class they had pretty much ever. I mean, it's massive what it can do for you when you go back-to-back. But yeah, going back to Utah, I mean, things went very bad, obviously, the last 2 years, and the biggest reason being quarterback injuries. So Utah has not only got a new quarterback in, but they got a new offensive coordinator in. Sometimes when you hear that, you get scared, like, okay, how quickly can they gel? But this isn't a situation where they haven't worked together. They have, actually. Last year at New Mexico, Devon Dampier's offensive coordinator was Jason Beck, and they led the 4th best offense in the country a season ago on a yards per game basis. So yes, G5 competition. Now they're going to be playing P4 week in, week out, even though they did actually put up some good numbers against some P4 teams last year. A couple of them they did play, one of them being the other Arizona school that shall not be named on our crossover episode here. But I do feel like this Utah team's got a good chance to bounce back. They have 2 offensive linemen when you look at it that both of them are among the top. Their 2 tackles are maybe the best 2 offensive linemen in the Big 12. That might sound crazy. Both are projected first-round picks right now. And you get all 5 starters back. Massive questions at wide receiver. But a Utah defense that I still expect to be in the top 5 to top 3 of this conference after finishing second a season ago. Kyle Whittingham is still a dang good head coach. So I think Utah's got a major chance to bounce back off a wildly disappointing 5-7 season. Kyle Whittingham called it the most frustrating year of his career last year. And I do think this year Utah is going to get back to contending in the Big 12.
Dude, that offensive line is absolutely nasty. The tackle duo, ridiculous. Because is it Fano?
Yeah, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomo. Lomo actually an Arizona guy. He used to.
I was going to say you can thank us for Caleb snatching him out of our backyard because we all know Herm Edwards didn't want to recruit those guys. But that tackle duo is absolutely nasty, man. But we all know the story in Utah is Devon Dampier and what he is hopefully going to do for the offense. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do because, I mean, the Big 12 has some good mobile quarterbacks. Sam Leavitt can move. Avery Johnson is dynamic, but Devon is coming into the conference as one of the elite guys. So he's very interesting to me. He's going to have a good offensive line up front. I don't know too much about the cast that he has to throw to.
Neither do we.
Well, there you go.
I know names, but I have no idea who the top guys are going to be, honestly.
There you go. You can run the heck out of the football, though. You guys always have, whether it's big names or small names. So I don't really have questions about Utah being able to run the football. I am really curious with Devon.
Can I give you a Devon Dampier stat real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned Big 12, a lot of good rushing quarterbacks. Not just among quarterbacks, among running backs too. Devon Dampier led the country in yards per carry last year. He averaged over 7 yards a run when he did decide to tuck it and run. So when he takes off, it can be lethal. Only quarterback in the country last year to run for over 1,000 and throw for over 2,500. Like there was only like 4 ever quarterbacks with the type of stat line he put up last year. He is got a chance to have a really special season in the Big 12. There are a lot of people who have him as the second best in the quarterback in the Big 12, even behind Sam Leavitt. So that shows you how good some people are high on Devon Dampier. I absolutely think he can be one of the best quarterbacks in this conference this coming season when you look at his abilities.
Okay, so I was going to say that's the sack yardage. He was only sacked 5 times last year for 21 yards. So
elusive.
You can add a little bit. Yeah, no, that's nuts. 85-yard long. I want to say that was against the team down south, but I'm not 100% sure. But Dampier's a stud, man. He's gonna bring a really interesting element to that Utah offense. I love what ASU has coming back. And recently I had someone in my comments tell me, oh, you talk about the same players over and over again. First of all, I do my best to talk about everyone. Second of all, how can I not talk about Sam Leavitt and Jordyn Tyson? It's going into the year, it might be the best quarterback to receiver combo in the nation that we know of, because we know Jeremiah Smith's the best receiver in college football. We don't know if Julian Sain's going to be him. We know that Ryan Williams, right, but we don't know about Ty Simpson. I think we have a good idea about Arch Manning and Ryan Wingo. We're not 100% sure. I think the only one you would argue would be Cade Klubnik and Antonio Williams. But, I mean, ASU is going to be able to put some points up on the board this year just with Leavitt to Tyson. But they've got a lot of question marks at receiver as well. We have the number 1. Okay, who's number 2? Who's number 3? Who's number 4? Who's lining up where? Do we have our slot? Do we have an outside guy? Who's doing what? Who's our deep guy? Who's our check down? Like, thankfully Jordyn can do all those, but gonna need some help, man.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I do. I think with you guys, I think it's an impressive duo that you have. I really do. Tyson, but I also say this. I mean, I'm a big fan of Udo, the running back you got from Army. I mean, 1,000 yards last year, over that, 10 touchdowns too. So I really think that's going to be a strong asset too. With Arizona State, I think the only question really is the pass defense, right? I mean, you guys only had 24 sacks last season, which is not in the top 5, but you had in the 10th best pass defense, but you had a really good running defense. So that's where you guys do. We'll get to this Utah matchup later, but that's where that makes that matchup interesting, is you guys do well against the run, and Utah obviously is going to want to pound the ball a lot. But it is interesting that you were able to have so much success last year as a team, because one thing you do see among successful teams is usually they can rush the quarterback better. And that was just not something that Arizona State did at the top level of the Big 12. But when you look at the offense and how good it was, and the fact that you have 4 returning starters and you're going to move a guard over to center, I heard as well too. So I just have a couple of questions about some of the other pass catchers outside of Tyson, but that's more so just because they haven't shown a ton at ASU. I know you guys added some talented transfers there, and I know some tight ends are going to step up too. So I do feel like you guys will move the ball very well. I'm actually someone too. I'm a big Kenny Dillingham fan. With what he did last year, taking you from worst to first, I actually think he is right now, as we sit here today, the best coach in the Big 12 conference. When you look at right now, this moment, obviously Kyle Whittingham is the best all-time coach in this conference. To me, you could argue with a Mike Gundy, but it's actually won conference championships. So that's where I'm going to side with Kyle Whittingham by that distinction there. But I think right now with what Kenny Dillingham is doing down in Arizona, I think you have to, Arizona State, I'll say. I usually just say Arizona, but I have to differentiate now because I want to be.
We know what you mean, at least. Don't worry.
Exactly. So I'm a big fan of you guys, and I think that Arizona State has a great chance to repeat as conference champions.
So that's where I kind of want to move to next, is if ASU is going to win it, I think that you're going to be needing the Leavitt to Tyson connection to be one of the best in the country. You need the run game to do just enough. I love the Moneyball reference with, we can't replace Jambi, but we can replace him in the aggregate. You can't replace Cam Skattebo, but you can replace him in the aggregate. You just need to get the numbers. And that defense has a lot of guys coming back. There's a lot of good football players. That should be key for us. And then making some field goals. We have a new kicker. I don't know if I've ever brought this up to you before, but
we don't talk Big 12 kickers a lot on the Big 12 squad, so probably not.
That is true. The kicker that we brought in, Jesus Gomez, comes from Eastern Michigan. His first 3 career field goal makes were against ASU. When they beat us in Tempe, Herm Edwards got fired after that game. So he's already going to get his name up in the rafters. Crazy how that works. But that's how ASU is able to win it, man. So, I mean, what's Utah got to do?
I think Utah, you just got to, I think it really does. Utah needs to run the ball like at a very high level. And I will also say, I mentioned Devon Dampier still threw it successfully last year, and Arizona State or New Mexico last year was able to move it through the air well. So I do feel like that we are going to see this Utah offense have some success through the air. There are lots of bodies in there that are capable of stepping up and making plays. There's no one returning to Utah last year or coming to Utah that at the P4 level has had over 500 yards. You have a former really high recruit that was at Cal last year, who's kind of transferred around to Tobias Merriweather, that I do think could be that guy, but he's got to stay healthy and put it all together, something he hasn't done quite yet in his collegiate career. You have Otto Tia, who was really good G5 receiver at Utah State, but he's now shifted to a tight end. So what's that room going to look like? It's very interesting there. But for Utah, the recipe for success is, I just think, running the ball. But I also just feel like this Utah team, even just by being marginally better, they're going to be a lot better. This Utah team was dreadful in one-score games because, simply put, they just didn't have good quarterback play last year. I think they're going to have really good quarterback play. I think this is an offense that was terrible a year ago, makes a massive leap forward, while the defense, because they lost a couple of veterans, takes a slight step back. When I say slight, they were second last year. I don't see them matching that, but I could easily see them being, and I think they will be somewhere at 3, 4, or 5, because still a really good team. You got some questions along the defensive line, but we've just seen this Utah defense too many times year after year. This is the culture, the identity of this team. They're not going to be bad on defense, and they have a lot of still returning players that have played really well for them. Lander Barton being one of those guys I'm a huge fan of. Smith Snowden at corner too. So, and defensive linemen that can do their job. I was mentioning ASU's pass rush. Utah has some things to figure out with their pass rush as well too. I think Utah has the best safety duo in this conference as well too. I think when you look at Teo Johnson and Rabbit Evans,
I don't know.
A lot of people know, and I know you guys have a good one too. But as we said, the pass defense last year wasn't among the tops either. So that's where I'm curious to see which guys end up stepping up, making plays. But for Utah, I really think it's run the ball, be physical. A Utah schedule, I will say as well, no back-to-back road games this season. I think the byes fall at really good time. The fact that ASU and Texas Tech have to come to Utah, I think, is really big. Yeah, Utah has to play the rivalry game against BYU on the road, but BYU has no idea who their quarterback's going to be right now. And we're about to hit August. That's a massive problem for the Cougars. So I feel good about this Utah team's ability to bounce back, and I definitely think they can get to that 10-2, 11-1 type regular season. I think that's in play. Could it not go their way? Yeah. Big 12 is a really dang good conference. There's honestly 8 to 10 teams that I could see winning the league this year. And obviously, we would have said the same thing last year, except we wouldn't have included Arizona State. So this league is so full of parity. I think it's going to be a great race. But for Utah, really starts with that physicality up front in the trenches, led by the two best players on this roster that are their two offensive tackles.
That's the best part about this concert, man, is the parity. If not ASU, if not Utah, I don't know who. We will talk about that, though, coming up next on this Locked On Sun Devils, Locked On Utes crossover edition, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, trying to stay focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it starts. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Look, when I'm on my hydration, I notice that everything works better for me. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always that easy. And that's why Drip Drop is a must. Drip Drop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of the leading sports drink. I am really, really excited to get my first order. It cannot get here quick enough because everything that I'm hearing about it, and I know that I'm dragging through my days at work, this thing's going to be a game changer. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Utes and making us your first and second listens of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. If not ASU, if not Utah, JT, who's winning the Big 12?
I mean, it's Texas Tech. I mean, I know it's a roster that's been assembled on paper right now.
Paper champs.
These paper looks really good. It looks really dang good. You got your starting quarterback back. make major investments to upgrade the offensive and defensive lines in the trenches. Ton of talented pass catchers returning a year ago. Similar thing to an ASU, right, where you lose Skattebo. And I will say, I feel much better about Udo with you guys than I actually do about their back. I'm forgetting his name. He's a transfer from USC, but he didn't even eclipse 500 yards last year.
I'm not even sure, honestly.
Yeah, how much of that is him and how much of that was USC's offense kind of falling apart, or just USC's season going by the wayside, because they were kind of the opposite of you guys in some ways. They could not close some of those games. They had Penn State, ton of teams on the ropes, and they just couldn't close at USC. But yeah, I think this is a conference where I see Tech as my most likely pick right now, but Baylor, Kansas State, Iowa State's another one. As I mentioned, I really don't see BYU right now. Can anything happen in the Big 12? Utah had their backup quarterback, Cam Rising, who all of you know well, eventually come through, and he was able to be a backup and lead them there. But as we sit here right now, so yeah, I feel like there's a lot of teams that can win it. But if you ask me to pick one, Richie, I'm going with Tech. Who are you leaning towards?
I lean towards Tech as well. And it helps, not only is that roster so talented, and if you're going to make additions to a team, the transfer portal seems to be one of the more successful ways to do it. Not every team's Ohio State, but I mean, that's how good you can make your team if you nail your transfer additions. And I mean, ASU and Colorado were able to turn around as quickly as they did because they nailed the transfer portal. So that could help Texas Tech. I'm really intrigued with Baylor. I'm really intrigued with Kansas State. I go back and forth between those three teams as potential Big 12 champion opponents. With no offense to Utah,
I'm offended. I'm just being nice.
That should be totally understandable. I want to see what Dampier can do, but he can be one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in this conference, if not the most dynamic. But K-State, they're well coached, they're well recruited. That's a talented team, and they got the quarterback back. Baylor, I don't know who's going to have better offense than them. That offense is so loaded, man.
You think it'll be better than yours?
I think that they have a very, very good chance because I love Bryson Washington, their running back. I think he leads the conference in yards. And they got weapons, and Sawyer Robertson's pretty good too. So I like those three teams, but I'm with you. If I have to pick one, it's Texas Tech. Both of us play Texas Tech this year. Those are big games.
Utah out of the gate gets them. We get them week 1 of Big 12 play. So you get, we start the season with UCLA, Cal Poly, Wyoming, but then right away it's Texas Tech. Like, how real is this roster? I know Utah struggled at home last year, but historically, I mean, we could talk about the last time ASU made it up there, a much different program.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
That season got wiped out. We didn't. We did not get those wins. I want to believe we didn't get the losses, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah. But before last year, only Oregon for like a few years stretch, and that was a top 10 Oregon team a couple years ago, was the only team to win at Utah before things got as bad as they did offensively. And I feel like Utah is going to get back to being a very difficult place to win at home. Now, the fact that ASU and Tech both come there, it's going to be hard to keep that home winning streak intact, but Utah has said and done that before against really high caliber teams too. So I think this Utah team is going to be a really good test for Texas Tech week 1. And if that game is a blowout, it's not a great sign for either of those teams. But if that game is a high level game, very competitive, I think it very well even could have the chance to be a championship game preview, or at the very least, 2 of the top 4 teams in the conference.
Right. And I think that's another thing that's going to be beautiful about this conference is I, again, just like last year, anticipate that whoever's going to go to the championship game, it's going to come down to week 13, week 14, whatever it is, to find out how the tiebreakers end up going. ASU also, right out the gate, heck of a Big 12 game. We go to Waco to play Baylor. So we're both going to be tested right out the gate. What is
shout out the Big 12, by the way. Week 4, a lot of times the college football season can be a little strange because the SEC will do like a big non-conference matchup week 1 or week 2. So then by the time you get to that, they're playing one of their joke games. So that could be a real moment for the Big 12 if you have 2 of the top games that weekend. And I honestly think they do.
That might be the top 4 teams in the Big 12 that are playing each other first week of conference play, man. So that's exciting stuff. And then I don't know what K-State's doing. I guess we'll wait and see. But besides ASU going to Utah.
Mhm.
I like to think that's one of your toughest games, at least.
Absolutely.
What do you see as like the toughest game? Because ASU's got some really tough road games this year. They have Texas Tech at home. And that to me is potentially the season defining game for you because you lost to them last year in your first ever Big 12 game. And now you're bringing them to Arizona State, to Tempe. Here's your chance for redemption to get that win, but also to have a huge win in conference play. I think that's probably the toughest game for ASU. That's not Utah, but I mean, what do you think?
There's a lot to pick from. If you're Utah, you get Tech at home, Arizona State at home. But just because of what I mentioned, because those games are at home, even though I think Tech and Arizona State are better than the team about to name, I just think it's so challenging to win on the road in college football, which is one of the things that made what Arizona State did so impressive so last year. And you see every title contender, you have to squeak out one score. Well, just in general, if you want to beat some of the best teams, you got to squeak out some one-score games. But you guys were able to do it on the road in some tough environments too. And for me, I'm looking at Utah, even though they beat them 2 years in a row. I go back and forth between you get Baylor and Kansas. Utah actually gets Kansas State at home. So you get ASU, Texas Tech, and Kansas State all coming to Salt Lake City. That is
Lottie Uncle Tom Daw.
Yeah. That is massive. And as I mentioned, like you go to BYU. So that's tough, but it's just such a mess with the quarterback situation right now. I don't feel like that game will be as tough, even though it's going to be a rivalry game. Incredibly
Throw the
close.
record book out.
Throw the record book out. Always.
Sometimes that doesn't always happen. Ask U of A, but sometimes, man, you throw that record book out.
No, you're absolutely right. But I got to go Baylor. I think right now Baylor. I look at that one. That'll be November 15th. Now Utah will have a bye right before that game, so that helps. But
are you in Waco?
I think that it's in Waco. Yeah. So you go to Utah's last 3 games of the season, incredibly tough stretch for I mentioned some of no back-to-back road games and things like that. But you go at Baylor, at Kansas State, at Baylor, Kansas State at home, then at Kansas, your final 3 weeks of the season. I think Kansas is a team too. I think they can be a thorn in a lot of people's side again. I like Coach Leipold. Daniels is a talented quarterback too. That was a really disappointing season, but they became the Giant Slayers kind of late in the season with what they did to several of the top contenders last year. So as I look at this right now here, I really think that Baylor game, you already covered what makes the offense special. Obviously Sawyer at QB is an incredible talent too. I like Dave Aranda a lot. It seems like everyone wants to run him out of town, but I just think he's a really good football coach.
I do too. I think he's good.
Just if you're not winning conference championships, I think people get impatient. And sometimes I think that can be a very dangerous thing because we've seen a couple programs like Florida, and I know they're supposed to be better this year, but they wanted to run Billy Napier out of town last year. He starts to get momentum and turn things around. They would have fired him last year. They would have just been restarting once again. And instead, they're a team that a lot of people look at like, oh, they could make a playoff push in the SEC, even because of who they have at quarterback in Park. But yeah, I look at that Baylor game for me personally and say that would be the toughest, but there are so many Big 12 games that are going to be a grind. We already mentioned the one-score games last year. Utah didn't make out great with them. ASU made out better in a lot of them too. And then, hey, when you get to the title game, you absolutely throttle Iowa State in one we actually thought would be a close one-score game too. So these things can always get wild and play out. But the Big 12 is going to be an incredibly exciting race. And I said, Richie, I really think there's like 8 to 10 teams that could win this league. How do you see it?
I mean, yeah, man. There's so many good teams. I feel like TCU is really getting overlooked, and I like TCU quite a bit.
Love Hoover.
Yeah. So Hoover is
huge game week 1 for them if they want to make a statement. At Bill Belichick, UNC standalone window. Yep, they go to their Belichick's first ever game on that Monday, Labor Day.
I think they're going to stomp them, but that's just me not being a believer in Bill Belichick as a college head coach. Dude, I'll tell you what, Iowa State definitely has the game scheduled or circled. We got to go to Ames in November to play them. That's not going to be fun, but I want to focus on us as we round out this edition of Locked On Sun Devils. Yes. Yep. Let's talk this game. Locked On Sun Devils, Locked On Utes crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. ASU going to Utah, an underrated rivalry, one that built up in the Pac-12, RIP, in the early 2010s, I would say, is when that bad boy really started to get going. And I remember sometimes you just have those memories where you remember exactly where you were. And I don't even remember how the game went. I don't remember if ASU won or Utah lost. but it was when I first started to get into college football. And I was like, oh, Utah can't be that good. And it was a slugfest. And I was like, Utah? My dad was like, yeah, it's not the Utah team that we've known for a handful of years. And just Kyle Whittingham had them dialed in. And ever since then, I had them on my radar. And every year they pop up, I'm like, that's going to be a slugfest. And that's going to be the case again this year. It was a slugfest last year in Tempe with Cam rising on half a foot.
Yeah.
And then
Leavitt got hurt too, right? For you guys, didn't Leavitt get hurt?
Yeah, he got cracked in the ribs. Yeah. So I mean, like, that was a heck of a game last year. It's going to be a heck of a game this year.
I totally think so. I don't think I teased it earlier, right? 55-3 the last time that Arizona State came out to Utah.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're making that like turn off your Xbox.
It feels like we were worlds away from that game. Like, I can't even begin to imagine. I don't think the programs are in opposite spots because I don't think Utah is a dreadful. That's disrespectful. But it wasn't great. It wasn't great, obviously, then. And I do feel like Utah is in a stronger position now than, they didn't lose 55-3. But with this game coming in this year, Arizona State is obviously the program on top. They're going to get everyone's best shot and everything. And I think it's an incredibly fun and exciting game when you look at when it's going to take place. That's October 11th. For Utah, will have just gotten to play West Virginia before that too. I don't think is going to be great, but it's both of our third game in the Big 12 coming up into this season, and I think it's going to be an absolute battle. We talked about Utah's offensive line. They should, Wayshawn Parker, the back they got in, he had 700 yards as a true freshman at Washington State last year. He was part of that good offense that John Mateer helped to lead. So I think he's going to be good too. I think this Utah offensive line and this run game is going to be beastly. But Arizona State, they have a really good
less than zero questions about that offensive line.
Yeah, it's going to be a great matchup up front, going back and forth there. And then I look at the other side of the ball too, and I go, okay, so Utah defense, it's been really good. That at times caused some problems last year, but Cam Skattebo, man, I mean, he was tremendous. I mean, as a
people's running back.
One of my shows last year, I said, I'm going to see Cam Skattebo in my nightmares. And I forget the name of it, but one of the ASU accounts made like a joke and made a song out of it.
Yes.
He just ripped us.
Oh my gosh. Apart. Oh, dude. That's one of my favorite accounts that we have out there too. And of course I can't I can't remember, but shout out. I know they're out there.
It was amazing. But you mentioned it too, and I like Udo a lot, but Cam Skattebo was obviously the heart of your team. So how do you replace that? The grit he played with, one of the biggest reasons you're there on the cusp of beating a Texas is because of what Skattebo was able to do, right? So, and I am a little curious to see sometimes even the smallest wrinkles on the offensive line, like even though you have 4 of those starters back, you move one to center. So I am curious to see that, even though I still think it's going to be a good offensive line overall. And then we mentioned kind of that pass defense. That's where, okay, by the time you get to that point for Utah, Devon Dampier should have more games against P4 opponents under his belt. Is he ready for an Arizona State team that's going to load the box and going to make it tough on Utah to run the ball? I still think as we sit here, Utah will. It's not like the run game will be shut down, but Dampier's going to have to make some plays on 3rd and long. How much of those can he get by on scrambles? And how much of those is, hey, our guys winning on the outside and making things happen? Devon Dampier did his touchdown interception ratio last year, 12-12. He threw a lot of picks last year. Now, granted, he had some that bounced off his receiver's hands and things of that nature, but it's that statistic too that, Rich, you kind of mentioned earlier, you have questions about, can this Utah team rise to the top? And right now, probably the reason you don't have him in the top 4 is because, hey, it is a quarterback who hasn't gone P4 week in and week out. I think he's ready for that, but this is going to be a game where he's going to have to prove that. If Utah wants to contend in the Big 12, you can't go 0-2 against Texas Tech and Arizona State. You have to beat one of them. I think
you need that tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think Utah is going to be able to do that. I don't see them losing both games, and I think this is going to be a monster one too, because for a while, Utah, as you kind of mentioned, Richie, was the top dog, or for the last couple of years, the Pac-12, Utah was the top dog because they went back to back. Can Arizona State become the top dog of the Big 12? And in part, they were beating one of those teams that used to be exactly that in the Big 12. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but how do you look at this matchup right now?
I mean, this is a game that is much bigger than I think a lot of ASU fans may think. You're going to go into the year. You're going to go, okay, you got Texas Tech. You got to go to Iowa State. You got to go to Baylor. You have U of A at home. I feel like, and I hope that's not the case, ASU fans. Please let me know I'm wrong. But I feel like a lot of ASU fans are going to overlook Utah a little bit because of the way they were down last year. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be questions with Dampier until he shows us. And that really is my only big question with Utah
Yeah.
is Dampier, how the offense is going to look. I never have questions about the defense. That offensive line is disgusting. I don't know how we get the edge pressure off you, but I wish you guys luck with the interior guys because Jigabridge Kongaika, CJ Fight, and the rest of the beef that they have on that defensive line at defensive tackle. That was what made our run defense so good last year is you had to force guys to the outside, and then you had your linebackers who were able to set the edge. It's what made ASU so good. And they brought back almost the entire defensive line, almost the entire defensive tackle room. So that's where ASU is going to have to focus on shutting down Utah's running game. Now, offensively, it's going to be the Jordyn Tyson show every single week, but ASU is going to need somebody to step up with him. It's the Jordyn Tyson show featuring Malik McClain, featuring Jalen Moss, featuring Corey Butler Jr. Like, they're going to need somebody to step up opposite him in order to balance things out. When I look at Jordyn Tyson, I don't really have questions about is he going to be able to beat double coverage because he's got really good speed and he's a really good route runner. I saw side note, Matt Miller, ESPN, the draft guru and everything, he threw out a comparison to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I love that. And especially if he lived up to it. I loved him coming out. And I think Utah fans are familiar with Jackson Smith and Jigba. So
Yeah, good pull on your part, by the way. I remember that. Yeah, that was a rough Rose Bowl for the defense.
Yes. I need to see someone step up opposite of JT. And ASU's tight end room is ridiculously deep, and they're recruiting it at a high level. You got to get it involved, though. They've not really incorporated tight end overly much. Shimon Mateer was pretty good last year, but there's depth at tight end, too. And with the questions you have at receiver, let's get those tight ends out there because they're bringing in a ton of 4-stars. They're bringing in proven guys. If we could see Shimon Mateer and Kamari Anderson both have big seasons, and then let's see what the youngsters can do as well, I'd be a big fan of that, especially if you got that and not necessarily something out of your number 2 receiver, because those are touchdown guys. Like Mateer had 5 last year. He should have had 6, but, had a Butterfingers before the game or something. I don't know. So that's kind of my question there.
Yeah, and this is the thing. It's we're recording this towards the end of July, so these are the things that you're going to get sorted out over fall camp. Which receivers? We both mentioned that a little bit. It's more of a need for us. We would love to have a number 1 like Tyson, right? But we don't. So this Utah team, who are going to be those top receivers? Utah's offensive line is good overall, and I do think it'll be a top 15 unit in the country. I do have some questions about the interior offensive line. So can ASU's defensive line take advantage of that? We've heard, we're in the season right now where everyone's good, everyone's awesome. Like that's what you're at Big 12 Media Days talking to people. Like, oh yeah, this interior offensive line, they're good. They made strides forward. Maybe they have, but I don't. But if I just go back by what I watched last year, that wasn't the case. So that's where it's curious to see how it all comes together there. Defensive line wise, you lose 3 of your top 4 contributors on paper last season for Utah. They had some other guys step up due to injury, but it's probably the least confident I felt in that group in the last couple of years. So how are they going to be able to form? Same thing for one of the defensive end spots. Some of the depth there has been tested. So there's some things to figure out for this Utah team, but it's a Utah team that's going to be hungry. They're going to be excited, especially because of what you kind of mentioned, Richie. I mean, the fact that you go Baylor, TCU, you go at Baylor, TCU at home, then at Utah, then Texas Tech. Like that is a brutal stretch right there. And some of the quarterbacks you have to face along the way it's going to be a lot for your defense as well, too. So which team's more healthy? Injuries played a huge role in this game last year.
That might be the biggest thing, man.
Yeah.
It truly might be. Because Utah was right there and Cam Rising was not 100%. I'm not saying if he is 100% that he was what we had seen previous years, but I do think that was a huge factor in that absolute slugfest, man. So
yeah, I'll close with this. Utah was 5-7 last year. Every single one of those was a game in the fourth quarter at some point. Almost all of them were a 1-score game even too. So this Utah team is not that far off, but ASU is here.
Well coached.
It's going to be a heck of a challenge when we get there.
It's going to be fun, man. That might be a a conference championship preview game. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to talking to JT again in October. Hopefully he's looking forward to talking to me, but
I am, Richie.
You know,
I am. Even though you said Utah wasn't a contender, I still am.
It's okay. I am turning that corner very, very quickly. As we get closer to the season, when I start making my predictions for week to week, that's going to go from a 70% feel good about that game, probably closer to 50-50. So we're gonna see what happens then. But for Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils, JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this Locked On College Football Crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers. Thank you to the subscribers and everybody who makes these two shows your first and second listens of the day. We'll catch you guys next time. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Utes.